What? Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Keith Raynor, Ultiworld senior editor, the rarest of rare in-person Deep Looks, maybe once a year, Keith.
These used to happen a little more frequently, and it's crazy because even though we live like closer to each other than ever, we still get just too busy. Ships passing the night, you know. But today we've got it together.
So we are here in Connecticut. We're in Hamden, Connecticut. You can bet on the AUDL in Connecticut. So I've been immediately looking to DraftKings to see what's going on. But we're not talking much AUDL today. We are going to be getting you ready for the D3 College Championships coming up this weekend in Milwaukee. And we are also going to talk about the Western Ultimate League Championship weekend. And that's where we'll begin today. Keith, Seattle Tempest, they were the best team all season. They were the best team at championship weekend, and they're your 2022 champs.
They are. They were dominant in their semifinal and then take the final over San Diego 18-15. But in what I think was one of the best games that we saw all season, if not the, from a pure, like maybe not purely from excitement, but from the level of play, the teams really rose to the occasion. And that was exciting to see. I mean, they were really step for step in a way that very few teams have been able to compete with Seattle in that first half. But Seattle eventually able to pull away. San Diego was on their tail, able to stand up to Seattle defense, particularly Seattle's O-line defense had been so strong during the season. But San Diego was able to stand up to it, attack, and it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the depth that Seattle had was just too much for other teams to handle. They were able to, if you took away their primary option, their second option and their third option were still really tremendous players, and other teams didn't have that same depth all the way down the roster. And I think that's why you see them pull away. Neither semifinal was particularly competitive. Like Tempest already up 13-10 going into the fourth quarter. It was an uphill battle for San Diego. But I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with the way the Super Boom played this season. I didn't peg them for making the championship game and giving Seattle a run. And ultimately, this was kind of go back to the beginning of the year. Like, this is what we kind of expected. A lot of parity in the league overall. I think probably just underestimated Seattle's ability because of a kind of out of character, poor performance at Winter Cup.
Indeed. I think that shook the confidence a little bit. The same thing could have been said like for San Francisco, but we didn't buy on that. We were like, no, don't worry, they'll be fine when they come back in the regular season. Not the case. I mean, this is basically the game I thought we were going to get from Seattle and San Francisco, but by the end of the season, it was Seattle and San Diego. Although I'm still taking my victory lap on Arizona, calling them to qualify, which they barely did, but they did. And you know what, Charlie? They finished third. They beat Oregon in the bronze medal match. Oregon, I almost said something. They chirped at us. There was a little chirp, like, oh, they had us fifth in the power rankings for the season. You finished fourth. It wasn't like you broke seed by that much, you know? So shout out to Arizona for getting the win, but congratulations to Seattle on the title in the inaugural Western Ultimate League. And I think one of the things that people have been talking about, including on the site, you could certainly listen to Double Overtime, our WUL and PUL pod, but the league was really the big winner. I mean, it felt like a really successful season for the Western Ultimate League.
I mean, really good social media presence. Full disclosure, Ultiworld was hired to do the big weekends, so the big multi-game weekends in Utah and Arizona and San Diego, and then championship weekend. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
So we were the streaming provider for those games. I want to make sure that that's like made clear up front. But I think, the investment in the media side of what they're doing made the presentation of the games like very accessible for people, which I think then made the games that were not streamed feel particularly painful. I hope that they're able to get all of the games streamed next year in one way or another. I mean, you look at what the AUDL is doing on that front. And honestly, even in the AUDL, not every game gets streamed because there's problems, but that's the effort that they're making. I hope to see the Western Ultimate League do that, but totally agree. I think for a first year league for it to go off this well, you kind of hope to have a little bit more competition at championship weekend, I guess, but that's how it goes in sports. You're not always going to get that. I think that from a enjoyment and like looking forward to next season perspective, this was high quality ultimate entertainment.
You're making me think of Game 7 night in the NBA the other night. I thought we were going to get too excited. Game 7s got 2 blowouts, including one of the worst games I've ever seen in that context. But
you know how much money I had on the Suns, Keith?
Yeah. Yeah,
I didn't even hedge. I was like, nah, they got this game in the bag and back in Phoenix. Oh my God.
Look, the league not only did a good job from a streaming standpoint, but also just their social media presence, the energy. I mean, it felt like there was a lot of excitement around the league. And in part that comes from the league itself, selling themselves as an important, exciting entity. You see, all the great graphics that are put out on social media, the engaging like fantasy games that they were playing, that kind of stuff, I think really gets people interested in the league. And when you're following a sports league, a franchise, something like that, part of what you want is to be a part of the conversation, like a part of what other people are interested. That's what's attractive. So when you see other people are talking about this thing, oh, I'm going to watch the game. Did you see the game? Like that, it makes people interested in joining in. And maybe there's something to, the Western Ultimate League, it's their first season. Like this is the time when people are going to be the most energized. People are going to come out. Can they engender that support in the long term? That's a question I'm sure the league can ask for themselves, but this is a really successful start for them and, a great place to be as you're trying to build on this in the future.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The thing that we have these split leagues. And it's funny because we don't talk about it the same way we talked about MLU and AUDL. And I think for obvious reasons, like the geographic split means that it doesn't necessarily feel like there's as much direct competition. They're not.
And the AUDL and the MLU were like openly challenging one another, yeah. While the PUL and WUL have from the beginning been, very working hand in hand to try and achieve similar goals.
And what you want to see, I think, and like I've already seen people mention this on social media, let's have the PUL champion play Seattle and have a Super Bowl of sorts. I mean, that's basically how we've seen other pro sports develop, like AFC, NFC, NBA, ABA, National League, American League. Like we have these separate leagues that come together to make what ultimately, I mean, obviously this talk about 7,500 years in some cases. But that's where you're going to want to get to eventually, right? If you're going to have this work out. But here's the thing. We have to talk about the fact that the Premier Ultimate League, Keith, is struggling relative to the WUL in these areas. Promotion, social media, making it easy to follow what's going on, having consistent live streams. We just simply haven't seen that from the PUL this season. And I don't really know what that's going to mean for the future, but it's hard not to look at the two leagues and see a very striking difference in sort of the quality of the entertainment presentation that is happening, even though the PUL, I think, has, I mean, who is Seattle a favorite against as you go down the PUL power rankings?
I might have not had them that high.
They lose to Revo. They lose to DC.
I don't know.
Lose
they were
to Raleigh.
Pretty aggressive this year.
I don't know. I still think that the quality of teams at the top of the PUL is definitely higher than the Western Ultimate League, but that's not what it's all about. And I think it's clear to me that like the overall focus on presenting the sport in a sort of fan-focused way is just going a lot better with the Western Ultimate League this year.
We've seen people complaining about it in our Discord, on Twitter, the challenges in finding standings and results for the Premier Ultimate League, finding what the next games are going to be, finding highlights of the league. We're seeing the WUL pop up on SportsCenter with their highlights going out on Twitter. And some of that stuff has been a lot more difficult to find on the Premier Ultimate League. Some of that may be because, they have more teams and the teams are doing a lot of the management there. I imagine that a lot of it's because they've had so much change in leadership over this past 2 years or so that for a lot of them, this probably feels a little bit like starting over. So I imagine there are some real challenges that the PUL faces, and I have no real idea of the background money situations. Yes, I know everybody sees the fundraising goals or whatnot when people do their big jersey fundraisers. And so you can compare the numbers that way. But I have no idea what the investment is from private entities or entities within the league. So I don't know what the money situation is, the resources that each league has to work with. So it's very possible you see differences in presentation level because of that. But we've also seen that the Premier Ultimate League has reinvested a lot of what their time and energy in areas outside of game presentation. And this might be at a cost of that, is seeing a reduced focus on their social media presentation, on what their streams are going to look like. I'm not saying necessarily that cost isn't worth it. If they feel like, and fans feel like, that focusing on some of the other elements of equity and diversity of their leadership organization is worth it, then that's okay. You just have to recognize that is a choice being made. We are choosing to reinvest these resources elsewhere. And that may be part of what we're seeing on this front end is some of that cost.
Everyone's losing money in professional ultimate frisbee.
In pretty much ultimate frisbee period, but
yeah. I mean, let's not pretend that anybody, including the AUDL, is like making the big bucks. Like everyone is losing money. Everyone is losing money. I mean, there may be a couple of small exceptions that prove the rule, but it takes decades to get to success, and having a couple hundred people in the stands is not going to get the job done. That said, like if you're going to commit, like, I don't know, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, having a basic, like, here's the results of the games and like, here's when the next games are and here's how to watch them. Like that information has to be presented, and that's like a basic task that is being failed right now by the PUL. And I think that they can do better than they're doing now. I think people do say, oh, look at all this money they raised. Well, that money goes to the teams. When they do the jersey fundraisers, that money goes to the teams. And so the teams then have some budget to go to road games and rent the stadiums. And like, I'm sure the teams are still losing money even after that. So, it's a lot easier in some ways to be the Western Ultimate League and kind of come in clean. Think about all of the problems and things that have happened in the PUL over the last couple of years. And it is just harder. Like you don't have that momentum. They had a great first season, PUL.
Right, exactly.
Same as WUL. And then boom, COVID hits. And like you lose a lot of momentum. Obviously they had basically an entire leadership changeover. But I still think it's fair to say that there has to be improvement on the, sort of the basic operations of running a professional sports league.
And to echo your sentiments on the the Western Ultimate League, they also kind of had the opportunity to learn the lessons to build upon what the Premier Ultimate League had done in year one. So what I hope, and what looking forward in the future, how can the PUL improve in this area? I'm hoping that they can learn lessons from the WUL, that they can collaborate in a way that helps both leagues and do something that we didn't see from the AUDL and MLU. I'm sure they were still cribbing notes off each other, seeing what was working and what didn't work. But at the same time, it's different to have a collaborative relationship where you can reach out and say, hey, we're having this issue. How did you get your streams to be done in this way, but still be affordable? Or how did you manage these costs? Like those kinds of information sharing channels could still work. I feel like I've seen a little less of that open public support between the two leagues than maybe we had seen in the past prior to the WUL really launching their first season. But that also could be a product of the leadership changeover. You lose some of those contacts and connection.
Yeah, but also like it's still competitive.
Sort of.
I think there might be a little bit more kind of direct comparison competition happening than is publicly evident.
It's possible.
And it doesn't mean that like it needs to be a hostile relationship, but I think that, both leagues probably want to be the preeminent league that maybe takes over the other one. Like how is that going to work? I don't know. But it's an interesting thing. There were some great PUL games this weekend. Mm-hmm. Revo coming through. I was counting them out. I was saying at the beginning of the season, there's no way they're going to come on this long road trip and play DC and Raleigh and New York and be able to come out with a winning record in that set. Now, I was talking to a coach over the weekend, and I said, I think they're going to go 2-1. Well, they won them all, Keith. And in fact, they kind of look like they got better each game. For them to come into the final game and beat Raleigh and really make Raleigh kind of look pedestrian at times with their defense, I was impressed. I mean, this is still the team to beat in the PUL, no doubt.
I got to cop to the same issues. I would have expected them to go 2-1 on this road trip. I wouldn't have necessarily been able to peg which of the one it could have been. DC, Raleigh probably would have given the edge to Raleigh since they were further down in the road trip. But, it's the way that Raleigh and DC have looked. I mean, they have been kicking ass in this league.
Yes.
So to have Revo show up and beat them, also Revo just dominated Milwaukee in Medellin. So Milwaukee is one of the 6 best teams in the league. Revo looks like they're still a step above where everybody else is at, and everybody's going to have to play catch up. Everybody's going to be chasing after Revo. You thought that maybe after years away, after development of these other kind of super teams in the league, that might not be the case. But it looks like we're right back where we started way back when in the pilot season.
I mean, I just hope we get to see these teams, all 3 of those teams we just mentioned, DC, Raleigh, and Revo, all in the playoffs, so that we can watch them face off. And people have been saving some cards up the sleeve a little bit, but tip of the cap to Revo. It's hard to go on a road trip like that and get wins, and they pulled it off.
And just how great is it, Charlie, to see Elizabeth Mosqueda back on the field?
Incredible!
Oh my gosh, what a player!
I was skeptical that she was going to be ready to be back in time even for World Games. This Columbia team, they're running hex offense. You notice that?
It makes sense. Once it was spoken, I was like, how did I not see this before?
They're an interesting team, and I wonder what we're going to see from their World Games team. Columbia keeping their cards close to the vest.
Do they run hex offense, or does hex offense run Columbia's offense? You know what I'm saying? They've been at this for a long time. It doesn't look that different from what they were doing 10 years ago when the Cardenas twins were middle schoolers crushing on everybody.
How different is hex than Hostak?
Oh, come on. Nah. You're gonna get some angry emails, angry Discord messages incoming.
I understand, but maybe the space you attack is a little different, but it's more about philosophical differences. I mean, the spacing on the field, I don't know.
I can't even go in this area.
Just saying.
Get in trouble.
All right. Well, what we're going to do now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Michael Ball, Division III editor at LT World, will join us to talk about D3 Nationals. And after that, Keith and I will make our picks. So I'm going to actually teleport back to New York City. And then I'm going to teleport back for our closing segment. So stick around. You're listening to Deep Look. Welcome back to Deep Look. Joining us now is Mike Ball, the Division III editor here at Ulti World. Mike, a little 7,500 Club crossover action happening right now. How are you?
Doing all right, Chuck. Yeah, bringing 7,500 Club back from the grave. It's been a little bit. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, we're super excited. We've, of course, got Division III College Championships coming up this weekend. 3-day event. After we did, of course, the 4-day thing in the combo with D1 in December, for the first time, it will be a 3-day event all to itself. Just quickly, your thoughts on that? Do you like that they moved to a 3-day format?
Yeah, I do. I think everybody is a pretty big fan of it. I mean, we got the taste in the fall, like you mentioned, of being aligned with D1 and having it as a 4-day event. I think the reason it went to 3 instead of to 4 is because with 16 teams, it almost spreads the tournament out too much when you put it across 4 days. There's only 3 pool play games per team instead of that extra 4th game. And so in the fall, it was almost too spread out, which sounds crazy to say, but it kind of was. And so I think as long as we're at 16 teams, I think 3 is the optimal number. And I think that we saw a really high level of play in the fall because of it, because players were more well rested and able to put forth the best version of themselves. The last nationals that we had, I think before the pandemic, was the one down in Texas where we were playing in just unfair heat conditions for a 2-day championship event. And so to go from that to having it spread out, you saw the difference in the level of play. And so I think all in all, it's a much better thing for the players and for the fans as well.
Heat will not be a problem this weekend in Milwaukee. It's actually looking like it might be a little bit chilly. So bring the rain jackets, bring the layers.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at this tournament. So, first of all, I just want to note there will be live streamed games starting on Sunday, quarterfinals, semifinals, and then, of course, the finals on Monday, all going to be streamed. Additional video coverage on UltiWorld in our video subscription, and looking forward to a great tournament. So, in the women's division, Middlebury, the defending champs, #1 seed, Carleton College Eclipse, the 2 seed, Portland, the 3, Wellesley, the 4. Is this Middlebury's tournament to lose?
Yeah, it straight up is. There's no need to sugarcoat it. I mean, they won in the fall in dominant fashion. I mean, their closest game in the fall was 15-11. They bring back Claire Babbitt-Bryan, who is the best player in the division, and I know I'm very much biased in this, but I think just a top 10 player in women's college ultimate. She is fantastic. She would start on any program in the country. So returning off being player of the year in the fall, she's going to be fantastic again. Has a great supporting cast. Keisha Wild is one of the best handlers in the division. Tall handler, anchors their O-line. Cameron Umack was defensive player of the year for us in the fall. She's back as well. She's fantastic. They have depth, and they have been dominant all regular season as well. All signs are kind of pointing towards them making another run at a title here, and it's very much theirs to lose.
That's certainly the takeaway that I have looking at this. Last year got to see some of the late games and watch a little bit while it was at D1 as well. And it felt like some of their top competition might not quite be as strong. Portland had a really strong veteran group last year. They're still going to be one of the top seeds with Jacqueline Wataoka, who, is going to be pushing Claire Babbitt-Bryan for player of the year probably, but I think lose a little bit of depth. Looking at the rest of this field, who do you feel like might be the top challengers to upset a team like Middlebury?
Yeah, the obvious and #1 contender is the 2 seed Carleton Eclipse. So Eclipse actually have a win over Middlebury earlier this season. They played at College Southerns. It was Middlebury's first tournament of the season, and Middlebury was running fairly open lines, but at the same time, it was early for Carleton as well, and they used their entire roster as well. Carleton's, the whole faceless army trope gets rolled out a lot in Frisbee, but Carleton kind of lean into it. When we reach out to them for our reporting and such, they emphasize that they truly don't believe that they have specific players to watch and that they are a team, and they're very well coached. Their coaches were our second runners up for coach of the year in the fall. Despite their wishes to not have certain players be spotlighted, they do have some players that stand out. Tess Barton is very good. Emily Hall is very good. But they use their whole roster and play really well. And they already have that knowledge of having beaten Middlebury once this year. And there's something to be said for already knowing that they can be beat and having felt that before.
Do either of the other 1 seeds have a shot at taking down Middlebury or Carleton, for that matter, Portland and Wellesley?
Yeah, Portland's interesting. So Portland actually beat Carleton in the semis in the fall. These teams were seeded in the same order as far as Carleton being 2 and Portland being 3, and Portland got the win in the fall. Portland is one of the toughest teams to evaluate because they are so isolated in the Pacific Northwest. It's hard for them to get connectivity against other teams in the division. But Keith mentioned Wataoka being back. She was our offensive player of the year in the fall. Is high touches, fast movement, quick movement, drives that offense. She's capable of stepping up big and leading them to potential upset. And then, the 4 seed Wellesley, I got to be honest, I don't know much about Wellesley. I'm not that familiar. They weren't at Fall Nationals, but they played Middlebury twice at regionals and lost by 2 both times, 8-6, 11-9. So, a 2-point loss that I don't have intimate knowledge of how the flip went, but that could be as much as just a 1-break game. And so they've seen them several times. It's hard to beat teams, 3, 4, 5 times in a season. And so if everything were to go to seed and Wellesley were to see Middlebury in the semis, they've gotten a couple of good looks at them and have come close a couple times. They're more than capable of pulling off that upset.
And if you look at Wellesley's resume over the whole season, I mean, they have a 2-point loss to SUNY Binghamton. They have a 1-point loss to Brown, a team that almost went to nationals in D1. pretty good looking results for a D3 team. And then, of course, the close losses to Middlebury. So going to be interesting to see what they can bring. Are there any teams further down the pools, Mike, that you think have a chance to make a little bit of a Cinderella story run?
So one of the fun things about D3, and especially on the women's side, is that there is always, I shouldn't speak in absolutes, there's almost always like a Cinderella run team that comes out of nowhere. If you look in years past, so the fall was kind of chalky, but in years past, so 2019 semis for D3 women's had 6-seeded Oberlin, 9-seeded St. Olaf, and 14-seed North Park as 3 of the 4 semis teams. And in 2018, there was 7-seed St. Olaf and the 10-seed Lehigh that made it. And so there's a track record of teams kind of rising up from the bottom halves of their pools to make a run at the bracket and make a run to semis. I think the 2 picks that I kind of have circled are the Metro East teams. So that's 11 Skidmore and 12 SUNY Geneseo. So Skidmore came into regionals like low, not shown too much. They had a decent resume and everything. Really picked up steam at sectionals, dominating some teams, and then absolutely crushed Metro East regionals. They put a 14-7 win on Geneseo in the championship game. I look at teams that are peaking at the right time, and they scream that team, and they come in as the 11 seed largely because of some of their early season results. But they enter the weekend on an 8-game win streak where they have won in dominant fashion. In that 8-game win streak, their closest result is a 7-5 result that was largely wind influenced at Metro East regionals. But the next closest result beyond that is 11-7. I mean, they've been crushing teams. Geneseo on the other side, yes, their loss to Skidmore looks bad, but their resume on the rest of the season is very strong. They, other than that game, were fairly dominant. They have 2 close early season results against 5-seed Lehigh, where they lost on double game point in both matchups. And just largely speaking, I think both of those teams have the kind of resume that kind of like points to the team with Cinderella run potential and upset potential, and seem like they could be fairly low seeded in terms of where they should be.
Let's turn our attention to the men's division. Number 1 overall seed, St. Olaf. Number 2, Middlebury. Number 3, Barry from the Southeast. And number 4, Colorado College. Conspicuously absent from a Pool 1 seed is the number 6 overall seed and defending champion Oklahoma Christian. Kyle Henke will not be playing with OCU this year, but this is still a very good team. Why are they the 6th seed, and how dangerous are they going to be playing from that spot?
So first things first, let me correct you. It is OC, no U.
Oh my gosh. I literally, when I said it out loud, I was like, I feel like I'm getting this slightly wrong, but I appreciate that. OC, yes.
Yeah. It's misleading because a lot of their handles on socials and such are OCU, but it's for OC Ultimate. So just Oklahoma Christian. Oklahoma Christian are a warning to every other college ultimate player everywhere else on why regionals needs to be taken seriously no matter your bid situation, because they came out flat-footed in their first game of regionals and lost to Missouri S&T. Now, Missouri S&T is a good team. We have them in the top 10 of our power rankings. So it's not like it's a bad team to lose to.
Deserve to be at nationals. Nationals.
Yeah, that's we could do a whole other podcast just about that, where the South Central got hosed on their bid situation. But nevertheless, it's a team that OC should beat handily and did end up beating handily in the second place game to go. Beat them 15-12, but it was kind of a comfortable 15-12. So as a result, they're seeded low because of the rule where regional seeding regional finish has to stay true in seeding. And this is kind of for all the listeners who aren't as in tune with D3. There is it's an unwritten rule, but it's a rule that has been applied for every year of D3 where there's no regional rematches in pool play because the division lacks connectivity and teams don't get to see other region opponents as often as in D1. That's just kind of like and I'm a fan of it. I'm an advocate of it, but it's something that's always been kind of an unwritten rule in USAU. So OC couldn't be the 5 seed behind Colorado College at the 4 seed, so they fall all the way down to the 6 seed. It's no exaggeration to say that that is the best 6 seed that we have had in D3 for sure, and I would take an uneducated venture to say probably in D1 as well. They are very much loaded. You mentioned Kyle Hankey's not back, and we all watched how dominant he was in the fall, but they return largely the rest of their roster from the fall and then also pick up a few new transfers. They pick up Trevor Cook, Max Hamilton, Emmanuel Bololo. They've reloaded again this season, and they bring back Elliot Moore, who was our offensive player of the year runner-up, I believe, behind Walker Frankenberg. But they bring everybody back, and they're just as good. They were awesome all regular season. You saw them finish 5th at Centex, top D1 Centex, and win their pool there and make a surprising run there. They are the favorites still to defend their title despite coming in as the 6th seed.
Mark them as the favorites, right? But who are the top challengers? I mean, I know there's a couple of big names out there, but who could actually take the title away from OC?
Yeah, so the obvious candidate is the team they beat in the final in the fall, Middlebury. Middlebury bring back their entire roster from the fall, just like in the women's division. Their men's team brings back everybody. And the only reason they are the 2 seed is because of a double game point loss to St. Olaf at I-85 Rodeo earlier this season. That double game point loss came without the aforementioned Walker Frankenberg, Offensive Player of the Year, first team All-American in the fall, like quite literally one of the 3 to 5 best players in the division, and yet they still took St. Olaf to double game point in that final. They have Leo Silva Fernandez, who is our Defensive Player of the Year, and then just an incredible amount of depth behind him. Max Hanscom, Jory Dahl has stepped up as an incredible defender. Up and down the roster. I mean, I could read names, for the next 20 minutes. Josh Sims-Spayer actually was hurt in the fall, but will be back for nationals in the spring. He's very good as well. They only lost to OC by 2 in the fall, or by 2 breaks in the fall final. So they certainly have the potential to play well and play against OC. The sad thing is, because of OC's seeding, if OC wins their pool, they'll see Middlebury in the semifinal instead of the final, which is kind of a bummer for all of us as fans that we're seeing that in semis potentially instead of the final. But the other 1 seeds are all great teams in their own right. St. Olaf is really good. They have Will Brandt, who is one of the best cutters, if not the best cutters in the division, plays for the Wind Chill, plays for Sub-Zero. He also, Luke Bleers is their best defender. He plays for those same 2 teams as well. And then Ben Fetlin Souza is one of the best center handlers in the division and anchors their O-line. And they're extremely well coached as well. They're a big athletic team, and they'll be able to match up with OC's athleticism if they were to see them. I don't want to ramble too long here for you guys. Barry, the 1 seed in their pool, their only loss this season is a double game point loss to Richmond. That I think if you were to ask Barry in private where it was off record, they would feel like they let that game slip away and kind of gave it away. I mean, they were in control and in the lead the whole game up until the very, very end. Their top 3 is amongst the best in the division. They've got Walter Ellard, who's their main handler, and then they've got Caleb Enright, who incredibly dynamic cutter, fills the stat sheet, and then Colin Hill, who kind of serves as like their steady rock. They are the kind of team that like takes care of business and doesn't really play with their food. When they're playing bad teams, they blow them out and don't play around and waste their time. Their depth steps up and plays well as well. So they're in theory going to be pretty fresh and ready for that game against OC in pool play, and are more than capable of pulling off that upset.
I'm going to say this. Middlebury, I thought they were going to win in December. I even said before the game, Leo Silva Fernandez is going to take Kyle Henke out of the game. Well, I was wrong about that.
Freezing cold takes
I was very wrong about that. But what I will say is the fact that he is gone, I really feel like that it makes Middlebury have a strong chance. I'll save it for my picks. We'll see what I get to.
The thing I'll say there is like with Kyle Henke. I mean, he gets talked about a lot and deservedly so. I mean, anybody who watched saw how good he was in the fall. he picked up a lot of loose ends for OC, whereas like high stall situations, like look for Hanky, or like if people weren't getting open, he was able to hit like break throws that only a couple other players could hit. I think that as good as OC was, and the rest of their team is very good, this isn't a slight to them, I think his greatness kind of covered up for a lot. And I'm curious to see if they end up in a tight game where the pressure gets applied, like, and they don't have that security blanket anymore. I'm curious to see who's going to be the new person that steps up for them if they have that person.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take a quick look at Pool D because it's an interesting one. Colorado College at the 4, Navy at the 5. Who's the favorite?
Man, I'm very excited because I get to cover this pool, so I'll get to have eyes on this pool all weekend. So it's hard to say. And like Pool D is always the pool of death. You get that 4, 5, 9, like really tightly bunched trio at the top of that pool. So Navy really like planted their flag at regionals and staked a claim for why they need to be taken seriously. They'd had kind of an up and down resume all season where they had some really nice wins, but then also some like weird head scratching losses or head scratching tight games. Then they showed up to regionals and kicked everybody's ass. I mean, their closest game was 15-7, and they beat Richmond, who was a semifinalist in the fall and one of the top 5 teams in our rankings all season. They beat them 15-3. It was an absolute dismantling and like made Richmond look like a bad team, and that is not a bad team. There's the stereotypes that you would think to apply to a military academy school just straight up apply to Navy. They're very athletic and very fit and grind and work really, really hard. They play a style that doesn't always look the prettiest, but it is drilled and intentional and effective, and they know what they are doing. And while, you know, some of their throws and such might not always be the prettiest, everything is with intent and intentional. And they do have great players too. Max Benedetti holds down their D-line and is as good as any other player in this pool is going to be. Anthony Armad is also a really good player, and their coach, Dave Stira, does a great job game planning and preparing them for each opponent. So they can't be taken lightly. On the other side, or on the other end, Colorado College, I mean, they won the South Central that we talked about as being one of the top, if not the top regions in the country. It wasn't easy. They had a 15-14 win over Missouri S&T in the final. I think both teams were kind of laying it all out there, trying to avoid that backdoor game against OC. But they've got a strong resume. I mean, they've got wins over a lot of strong D1 teams. They went to Midwest Throwdown, and their only 2 losses came against Purdue. They got wins over, I believe, Wash U made nationals in D1, right?
They did.
Yeah. Colorado College has an 11-10 win over Wash U at Midwest Throwdown. So they returned their Donovan nominee from the fall, and he was a finalist, Josh Felton. Very strong defender. The player to watch on their team, however, is Lincoln Grinch. Lincoln Grinch is a tall handler with very rangy throws. He is also an exceptional defender and wants to play defense and looks to play defense and looks to hunt blocks. He is one of those players that could like go stretches where he kind of carries the game, where it feels like he's directly involved in every point. So if I had to pick between the two, I would pick Colorado College just because of the consistency of their resume this season and the fact that they came out of such a hard region. But anybody who takes Navy lightly is going to regret it. And the way that they closed out at regionals, I mean, they're riding high right now. And that was just 2 weeks ago. Like that, they haven't like had that like long gap that you get typically between regionals and nationals. AC regionals was less than 2 weeks ago from when we're recording right now. It'll be 2 weeks from nationals. So they're peaking at the right time and still have that momentum going.
Before we let you go, you got picks for us?
Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like I've been talking too much. So are you guys making picks?
We are going to make some picks.
Are you making them now, or are you guys doing that in a later segment?
We were going to do it in a later segment, but maybe we could be forced to do it right now if we can. If you got the time, Mike.
Oh shoot, I did just look at the time. Yeah, you know what? Let me go ahead and just make my picks, and then I'll have to listen in to hear y'all.
See, that's we want to get the listen. We want to get the download.
Yeah, that's right. At least one, right? There'll be 2. I'll send this to my mom. She'll tune in as well. All right, let's go. Let's start in the women's division. What level of picks you want me to make? Just finals and winner, or semis as well?
Semis, finals, winner. Semis, finals, winner.
Okay. So definitely have Middlebury making it. I'm gonna say Portland wins their pool and gets to the semi as well. I think that Carleton makes it as well, which then leaves... Oh, shoot. I can't have Portland and Skidmore. I'm just now really looking at how the bracket would break down. I think...
You're doing the right thing.
I really think that Skidmore gets a good run. Can't go chalk, so let's see. There's just no chance that the women's division goes chalk. It never does. I mean, you heard me read out the results. It never does. Okay, so if they finish second in Pool B, shoot, they're going to see Middlebury in the quarters. So there goes that. Okay. All right. I have to pick a team then from. So let me amend this. I'm going to go Middlebury, Carleton, Portland, so the top 3 seeds, and then I'm actually going to take St. Olaf coming out of Pool D. So St. Olaf has a resume of peaking at nationals. They get, as the 9 seed, they get to play Wellesley in their first game. And Olaf played close games with Carleton in the series. And so I think that's a likely bet. I hate that Skidmore is lined up with Middlebury, because otherwise that would be my pick. Dang. All right. Yeah, let's go. Those 4 with Middlebury and Carleton making it to the final. I think Portland missing Kim Dorr from the fall, I think doesn't have the same horses to beat Carleton. So I think we do get the 1 versus 2. And then there's no world where I'm going to pick against this Middlebury team to not come out on top. So I've got Middlebury beating Carleton then in the final.
All right. There it is. And how about on the men's side?
All right. On the men's side, let me make sure I have my bracket pulled up here. So, definitely going to have Middlebury versus OC in 1 semi. And then going to have St. Olaf.
Here it is.
Coming out of
Pool D.
But St. Olaf is going to play... Man, it's chalky, but it's going to be Colorado College. So
you're taking the 1 seeds plus OC.
Yeah, I'm taking the 1 seeds plus OC, and this might surprise you, but where I was considering the upset was going to be Barry coming out of as the 2 seed out of Pool C and playing the winner of Pool D in quarters. Actually, you know what? With this, well, no, because Barry's going to have that pre-quarter game. I'm keeping it. It's going to be a tight one. And Colorado College and Barry played a double game point classic in the fall. I think we see it again with Colorado College coming out on top this time.
All right.
So then semis, I think I want to pick Middlebury to beat OC so badly. I hate that that's the semi.
Semis have a way of being the best games at college nationals, though.
And it's going to be. I not to undermine the final, but it's going to be in this one. Let's go. I'm gonna go ahead and say OC. I think OC beats Middlebury, and I think Colorado College beats St. Olaf, and I think we get that all South Central final. With
they didn't play at regionals, which makes it even more fun.
They did not. Exactly, they did not. And I think OC wins. I think the fact that the final is on its own day is gonna really play to OC's top end being fresh, and I think they have more of the top end than Colorado College does, and I think that's enough to put them over the top. So I think OC over Colorado College in the final.
Calling the double repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's two teams that bring back so much of their roster from the fall and looked so good in the fall.
And never has the window between the last time that you played and this time been so small, right? I mean, this is a repeat of months ago, not a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it feels gross. It's not exciting, but it's what I think is going to happen.
You know what, Mike, though? You're doing what you got to do, which is you got to make the picks that you believe are right.
Hey, it's what's working in Bet's perspective.
I take a lot of heat on this program. I take a lot of heat on this program for picking the favorites. And you know what? The favorites often win, guys.
They're favorites for a reason. They're favorites for a reason.
Bet's perspective column. If you're not a subscriber, you are literally missing out on free money. Free money.
We are printing money. It is incredible.
Did your parlay hit again this week, Mike Ball?
It sure did, Charlie. Thank you for bringing that up.
It easily pays for your subscription. Like
it's like literally so easy.
What are we, Keith? We're 13-3 on our best bets so far this season.
Not even. I think it's 13-2. Yeah.
No, because I lost.
It is 13-3. A running tracker of my own best bets because I'm undefeated so far this season.
You are.
I was like 20-2 last year or something. I love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to this week's. I was just in Colorado and they had the AUDL and DraftKings app, and I was there were no game lines up.
Is it legal in Wisconsin? Am I going to be able to bet this weekend?
I do think it is, but I don't know if they have AUDL betting there or not. That'll be the.
I'm gonna be the only person that loses money going to nationals for Ulti World. Not on the AUDL though. On all my other betting that I'm gonna do.
All right, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in Milwaukee.
Yeah, guys. Appreciate you having me on. Looking forward to it.
Mike Ball, D3 editor here at Ulti World. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Thanks again to Mike for coming on with us. Great to talk with him, and looking forward to this weekend's tournament. Keith, I think it's time to make our picks.
It is that fateful time. I mean, it feels like home, to be back making the picks where we need to be. I know we made some picks during the regular season, but it's different beast when it comes to nationals. Also, the game, #the game is coming back, baby. The D3 the game is up. Yeah, you if you're getting this now, you're probably running out of time. You need to go enter for the D3 the game. D1 the game coming soon too.
We're going to talk about our game picks in our subscriber bonus segment. So make sure you check that out. Become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. We'll go deep on our game picks where we see value. And who knows, if the AUDL lines are up, maybe we'll drop a little bonus pick in there too. So Keith, let's do it. We'll start in the women's division. Where are you going for your semis picks?
Mike talked about this quite a bit, right? Things never go to plan in the women's division. But you know what? That was true last year. The thing is that it doesn't go to plan except at the top, right? Total chaos below the top, but the best teams are the best teams and by a long shot. So like Mike, there's no chance I'm picking against Middlebury and Carleton. Wellesley, I was a little wavering on, but the results, I mean, they were pounding people in New England. New England is the region to beat, so being able to go out there and beat teams by a lot is to me a great sign of what Wellesley can do. So I like them. Portland, I'm a little nervous on though. Jacqueline Watoka is a talented player. Behind Claire O'Brien, probably the best player in the division, but they lost a lot of the contributors from the team that carried them to the finals last year. And I don't think the pool's going to be easy for them. So I'm a little nervous about picking Portland. I feel confident with Middlebury, with Carleton. Let's see. Portland, so if they win their pool, which I think is still a pretty good possibility, they'll have to play the winner of D2 and A3 to get to semifinals. So, something like Lehigh and Geneseo or Lehigh and Barry, that could be a pretty tough one. I actually think I'm going to take Holyoke to beat Portland in pool play and win Pool C. So I'm going to take Middlebury, Carleton, Holyoke, and Wellesley into semifinals. Sorry to Coach Dan Young.
And then
Dr. Coach Dan Young.
So look, I'm also taking Middlebury. I'm also taking Carleton. These are these teams are locks. I think Portland's going to get back to semis.
I'm out on a limb here. This is not the safe pick.
I mean, I think that they've got the experience in that spot now. As you pointed out, they still have one of the best players in the division on the team. Yeah, like I don't think they beat Carleton this time around, but I'm still taking them to get to semis. The fourth team, man, it's going to be some crazy out of nowhere situation. Gosh, I don't know. Give me St. Olaf.
I knew it. Look, when Mike was talking, I was like, oh my gosh, St. Olaf at the 9 seed? What are we talking about here? I know they lost a lot of players, but...
Give me St. Olaf, and that gives me Middlebury and St. Olaf in the first semi and Carleton and Portland in the second semi. I'm taking Carleton. I'm taking Middlebury. I think we get the game that we've been waiting for.
I will take the same final, and I will confidently take Middlebury to win.
As will I.
I think Middlebury is going to go unchallenged through this walk to a title.
Over under, they win all their games by at least 3.5 goals.
3 is like exactly where I think the line might be, so it's a great line. I think I'll take the bet that they do not cover that. I think that they will give up one game where it's a little closer, but even then, I don't think it's ever going to be a doubt.
All right. On to the men's division we go. And, in some ways, I think there's like less certainty because there's not just one team that seems so clearly dominant. I'm going to go with... I'm going with St. Olaf. I'm going with Middlebury to win pools A and B and get to semis with good matchups in pre-quarters, or in quarterfinals, that is. And then it's just really tough in pools C and D. I mean, I think Oklahoma Christian's a little overrated. They're going to be an extremely popular game pick for obvious reasons. Honestly, I think Barry's going to beat them in Pool C. And I'm taking Navy with the upset over Colorado College in Pool D. So what does that give me for matchups? Who does Oklahoma Christian play if they win that pool? So in quarterfinals, they're going to play the 2D 3A. So that's like Colorado College versus who? I don't know. It's going to be Colorado College that wins that game. So I think we get Oklahoma Christian, Colorado College in quarters. And you know what? I think I take Oklahoma Christian in that one.
Oh.
So I've got Oklahoma Christian getting through. And then, what do I end up with? If Barry wins, wait a minute. No, that was Barry. Cause I have Barry winning Pool C.
Oh, you have the B. Okay.
I'm getting mixed
Pool
up.
C. Got it.
2C is going to be,
they'll play the winner of Pool D.
It's going to be OC, and they'll play the winner of Pool D, which is, I'm picking it to be Navy. I think Oklahoma Christian beats Navy. So I think we get Olaf, Middlebury, Barry, and Oklahoma Christian in your semifinals. So I'll leave it there for now.
I like that path. I think this Barry team is getting slept on. I think they're good. I think they look like a fraudulent 3 seed, I guess, because people don't know them that well. But I think they have some real deal. But I also like Colorado College. But I can't really argue against Olaf, Middlebury, and OC. I do think OC is kind of a tough path. I think having to play Barry in pool play. Also, I like Claremont at the 7. But is there any room for me to get B2 in there? I mean, the problem is they have to go through A1. And I think St. Olaf is good. So if they don't win their pool, they have to be one of the top 2 seeds to make semis, basically, unless they finish third in their pool and find a different path. So maybe they'll throw the bracket for the matchups, but that does not work out usually. So I've got Olaf and Middlebury, and then I'm going to take OC and Colorado College to win the pools. So nothing shocking there, and we noted that that's going to put Barry on the path with Colorado College, only I have them going through pre-quarters and you don't. Do I think Barry can get through Colorado College and we end up with the same 4 teams? I think I do. I do think I like that to go down. So we're going to end up with the same 4 teams despite doing it in different ways.
So neither of us take Colorado College or Navy. We'll see. I feel like it's very possible that Colorado College is just the real deal and they're going to make a big run. But for me, in the finals, look, I got to do it. I'm taking Middlebury to get the win. So I'm going to end up with having Oklahoma Christian going up against Olaf in the semifinal. I just want to confirm that that's what I have in my path.
Yes.
Okay. I kind of want them to get the rematch against Middlebury, but I don't think it's going to happen there. I think it's going to happen in the final. I think we're going to, in a weird way, end up with that at the rematch in the final. So I'm taking OC to beat Olaf in semis. I've got Middlebury over Barry in the other semi, and I've got Middlebury taking down Oklahoma Christian, getting the upset win this time. I guess it wouldn't technically be an upset here, but it's of course the rematch of the final from before. But no Kyle Henke this time around. I've been waiting to pick this Middlebury to beat OC. Maybe they'll meet up in the semifinal. Maybe they'll meet up in the final. I think the matchup is preordained, and I think that this time Middlebury is going to get the better of them.
All right, on my side, it's a little more straightforward. I have Middlebury versus OC in the semifinals, and then I have Olaf versus Barry. I'm going to take Olaf to make it to the finals. I feel like they were also not getting enough respect from our own Mike Ball. They were not that far off of being in that final last year. So they have he listed off some of the talent on the team. Will Brandt, Luke Bleers. I mean, this is a good team. So I've got Olaf moving on to the final, and I'm also taking Middlebury to upset OC.
Wow.
But not by seed and upset, but they're the rating champs. I'm also taking Middlebury, pretty much returning everybody. Basically, they're top four, if not deeper than that. But I think that's going to be a big difference against a team that lost its best player. I know Elliot Moore is still there. I know they picked up Emmanuel Bilolo. I know that they have a number of talented players behind them, but I think that this Middlebury team is deep, and I think they may be able to beat them at the top end where most teams can't do that against OC. So I'm going to take Middlebury against Olaf, and then I'm going to take Middlebury to finish it off with a title.
Middlebury sweep picked by both of us, and so pranksters, the favorites here on Deep Look. So that is how our picks are going to go this weekend. We hope you tune into the coverage. We'll be, of course, covering the tournament all weekend long on oldteamworld.com. Streams going up starting on Sunday for the quarterfinals and through semis and onto finals on Monday. So, put it in your schedule. It's going to be in your work calendar. You can't take meetings during the finals. You're working from home. So enjoy the coverage, everybody. We'll be back with you next week to break down what happened at D3. And of course, look ahead to the Division I College Championships. As we stand, Keith and I know the pools, but they're not public yet. So we'll talk about them next week right here on Deep Look.